What is going on, everybody? It is Wednesday, September the 8th, and this is a midweek edition of News Radar. So I talk about folding phones a lot on this channel, and whether it's something like Surface Duo that actually has two screens and a hinge in the middle, or it's something like the Z Fold, which has a folding OLED screen, it is something that I love a lot, and I can't really see myself going back to a normal old school now candy bar style phone. But there is one thing about folding phones that does kind of leave a little bit of concern in the back of my head, and this doesn't apply to the old Surface Duo. This applies to the folding OLED screens, and that is the long-term durability, or maybe I should say fragility, of folding OLED screens. Over the last couple of years that these things have been on the market, we've seen that there is some issue there. They're just softer than, of course, actual glass, because this ultra thin glass has to bend, and that's a very difficult thing for glass to do without breaking. Some of the older versions of the Z Fold, you could press your nail into it and leave an indentation. And while that's not something that's as easy to do on the Z Fold 2 and Z Fold 3, there are still tons of issues around, and they can pop up at some... Look, it's always an inconvenient time for these things to pop up. In fact, I just saw this on Reddit earlier today. This is actually a Z Fold 3 after just 2 weeks of use. There is a stress fracture of some kind down that hinge, down that middle section where that screen has now stopped working. And of course, I joked that it had just turned into a Surface Duo at this point. That's disheartening, that's worrying, that's concerning. And while nothing like that has happened on my Z Fold 2, look, in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, is this thing going to be, in perfect condition still? I don't know. Whereas, something like this, yeah, I'd say nothing's going to happen to this thing in 2-3 years, whatever. It's gonna, as long as I don't drop it again, everything's going to be okay. Well, the reason I bring this up is because LG just announced a brand new kind of folding display tech that they're claiming is as hard as glass and will reduce the actual crease visible in these devices. Now, they're calling this real folding window. And it's not actually ultra thin glass as far as what this is saying, which is why this might actually work better. What it is a thin polyethylene terephthalate PET. You've heard the acronym PET if you've been looking at the Z Fold. That's what the screen protector on the Z Fold 3 and Z Flip 3 is actually made of. It's made of PET, which is a thing that I'm not going to ever try to pronounce again. So LG is actually making an alternative to UTG to go on top of these folding OLED screens. So you take a special version of their PET and you add some kind of coating atop that PET layer that they're not really going into detail about what exactly it is. And apparently that results in something that is more flexible than ultra thin glass while being just as tough as glass. We've got a quote here that reads, "Unlike existing polyamide films and tempered glass type materials, the cover window that applied LG Chem's new coating technologies will maximize flexibility while also providing optimized solutions for folding phones, such as making improvements to chronic issues like fold impressions on the connecting part of the screen." And they're claiming that after 200,000 folds, their new real folding window tech has not degraded at all. And obviously LG's out of the phone making business, but they're still making screens and making things like this. So perhaps some kind of technology like this might make its way into some modern smartphones as we talk about folding phones, but also rolling phones and crazy things like that. It's going to be interesting to watch this technology progress, because I think it's going to progress very, very quickly, as it already has. That's not going to slow down. This is going to get better and better, where phones, that we have now are really good, but in 2-3 years, they're going to be unrecognizable. They're going to be so incredibly good that the fact that Z Flip 3 is already kind of going mainstream, give it a couple more years, you're going to see folding OLED screens everywhere, and these durability issues are going to be a thing of the past very quickly. Jumping to some rather strange news, actually, about an older phone, the Google Pixel 6. There's something very odd going on with these devices, because we are getting piles and piles, oodles of reports that these phones are effectively bricking themselves overnight, and no one really seems to know why or what is actually going on here. This headline here from XDA. Some Pixel 3 devices are stuck on EDL mode and nobody knows why. So obviously this phone did launch in 2018, so it's almost 3 years old. So there's probably not a ton of these things, around in the world. But what's happening is people are effectively going to bed, waking up in the morning, and their phone is in what's called emergency download mode or EDL mode. It's a recovery mode. So something has maybe failed inside these pixels. Maybe, the storage or something has failed. So it's asking you to flash not just the OS, but the actual NAND image. Like it's lower than the actual OS because it can't boot. Maybe almost think of it like your BIOS in your computer. So something has failed there, and these phones, it's just happening at random to people. But apparently reports are beginning to pile up. This is not like one or two people. Apparently this is a number of people. And ironically, I actually just traded our 2 Pixel 3s in towards some stuff to help with some of the, tech costs for things that I cover on this channel. So unfortunately, I no longer have them here to be able to look into this to see what's going on. Really strange. I mean, Pixel devices have had their fair share of hardware issues over the years. I remember the biggest one that everybody freaked out about was the Pixel 2 had that weird bluish tint to I believe it was a bluish tint, kind of a bluish hue to the screen. Most of the stuff that's gone on with the Pixels, though, have not really been that big of a deal. And maybe this isn't that serious of an issue, 3 years later for a rather, a kind of old device to be failing like this. But it is really weird because no one knows what's going on, and Google's not really offering any help or any solution on this. Do you have a Pixel 3? Have you seen this? What's going on with your device? I would love to know. And last but not least, maybe the most typical Microsoft thing you could ever possibly hear. So Microsoft has had an app for a while now called Microsoft News. And on the Surface Duo, it worked very well. You could have your news sources, and you could basically, just was a feed to get your news. But the cool thing about it was that you could span this app. You could drag it to the middle, and on one side you got your news stories, and on the other side, when you pick one, it would show the actual story here, while you could still get the list of news items here, and the actual article on the other screen. So it worked really, really well, and it was an app I used as an example for like what is spanning, why do you want it, how does it work? It worked really well. Microsoft just rebranded Microsoft News. They're calling it Microsoft Start. And, just from appearance-wise, it looks fine. It's not all that different from Microsoft News as it already was. You can go to microsoftstart.com and you can kind of get an idea of kind of what it looks like. It's these nice little rounded tiles and everything, and, whatever. It looks decent enough, and the app seems to work pretty well. Why am I talking about Microsoft Start? Because what they've just done underlines my biggest concern for Surface Duo going forward. I made these videos talking about how the hardware on Surface Duo was not the concern, was not the problem, was not why this device is jittery. And I get people get mad at me all the time because I talk about how Surface Duo is quite powerful. I just showed you guys playing 2 high-end games at once, and I still got people getting mad at me about it. The hardware is not, was not, has never been the problem. In Surface Duo 2, the hardware will be even better. It'll be even faster. And I've beaten this dead horse 100 times. The concern you should have about Surface Duo and Surface Duo 2 is software, and it is Microsoft's commitment to the software on Surface Duo. If you open up your Duo and you go to Microsoft Start, here's your news. It looks fine, right? It looks like a news app. Here's what sucks. If you span it, it does not span properly. It is literally being cut right down the middle, just as if this was a third-party app that did not give a rat's ass about Surface Duo. And this sucks. Microsoft, you just updated an app that you showed off in your own stuff as a reason to span on Surface Duo, and you just remove the spanning feature on this device. This is, in the grand scheme of things, is this a big deal that spanning doesn't work on Microsoft's own news app on Surface Duo? No, absolutely not that big of a deal. But the messaging that it sends is absolutely horrible. The messaging that it sends is that you don't care about this device's software. And you've sent this message in an innumerable amount of ways over the last 10 months or so. It is exceedingly frustrating for someone that believes in this form factor, that believes in this device, that believes in dual screen, that believes in what you're doing, that you're not taking the time to make sure your own apps work correctly on your own device. It sucks. And this type of stuff isn't a problem on other devices. Your own apps work better on Samsung's devices than they do here. And it is because of stuff like this that when people ask me, should I buy Duo 2 when it comes out? My answer is no, don't. Wait. Wait for idiots like me to spend $1,400 to buy this thing to tell you if they've done anything to fix these problems. It is September. It's been almost a full calendar year. We still don't have Android 11. It is still buggy. It might actually be buggier today for me than it was when it launched. My one screen still turns off all the time. It just randomly a screen turns off. Keyboard dismisses itself. If it's not covering the text field, it's dismissing itself. It's sluggish. It's buggy. These are software problems. And the software that Microsoft has made for this phone sucks. And they're not fixing it. They're not doing anything about it. Somehow, we're still missing 90% of the features in Microsoft Launcher that every other device has. We can't even do custom icons in the launcher that Microsoft makes on Microsoft's own phone. So look, maybe September the 22nd, they announced that Android 11 is here and it's going to fix all these problems and they're going to double down and they're going to blow me away. But probably not. Probably it's going to be another buggy mess. I hope I'm wrong. I really genuinely hope I'm wrong, and I'm ranting and I'm rambling, but this stuff irritates me because it's an absolute lack of attention to detail. It tells me that you don't actually care about this product. So take that for what it's worth, guys. That's all the news I have for you today. I'll have another one ready for you, another episode of News Radar ready for you on Friday, and then we will be back to our normal Monday and Friday cycle. Thanks for making it to the end of this video and humoring my rant. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.